It's an acronym that stands for be grateful, be relational, be enthusiastic, be authentic, and be teachable. Some of the principles that have emerged through all the talks that we've heard this evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it really is fascinating the work that you're doing. And so I know that you talk a lot about adult behavior. A lot of
Yeah.
us have been focusing on adult behavior. So why is focusing on adult behavior so important to student behavior?
Well, adults, we model the behavior that we want to see, even because kids listen to what we say, but they do what they see us doing. And that's so important to remember. From kindergarten all the way to college, they hear us, but they watch us and they'll do what we do. And so adult behavior is pretty much the culture of your school, your district, or your classroom. And I got this definition from my good friend and international speaker Steve Bowler. He defines culture as that culture is the beliefs, the norms, traditions, and the behaviors that the adults model on a consistent basis. And that's so powerful. So if you think about, what it's like in the classroom, what it's like in the school, if you trace it back to consistent behavior, it's the behavior of the adults because the students come and go. And in high school, they're out there, every 4 years. Elementary, it's, grade levels change, and middle school is 2 to 3 years, depending on your setup. But the adults are there much longer than the students are. So those traditions that adults maintain or hold on to defines the culture. And then how students respond to that, that's the climate, how it feels. So it's so important that we really focus on our own behavior because truly the only two things we can't control are attitude and our actions. We can't control where the kids come from. We can't control the zip code. We can't control the house. We can't control the environment of their neighborhood. We can't control any of those things. We can only control our attitude and our actions. So how we show up has a direct impact on the experience that students have in our schools.
Hmm. And I know you're really involved with your staff. I know you're looking out for them. I'm wondering when people come to you and they say, I'm just so overwhelmed, how can I be great? Or how can I manage all of that and keep it together when I'm feeling so overwhelmed? What
Yeah,
do
the
you say?
first thing is just listen. I think Jill or Julie just said, empathy is compassion in action. I think that's how she used it. And
Mhm.
so that's one of the things that we can do is just show compassion by understanding, by listening, and then identifying what problem can we actually solve. And one of the things that we're focusing on in our district, and my role in particular, is to remove barriers so people can be successful. Sometimes the barrier can't be moved, but we have to really think about, well, like, what is it that we can do within the school structure, the system, to make it a little bit easier for that teacher where they're feeling overwhelmed. And sometimes it's just problem solving. It's listening to where what is the trouble spot, and then problem solving together, or bringing in somebody else who may assist or may support, maybe meeting with the principal to share that concern, giving them advice on how to address a student behavior or talk to a family or talk to a parent, or even address a situation with a colleague and just sit with them to help mediate that conflict so that people can move forward. So again, it's listening, identifying the problem. Sometimes again, it's just listening. It's not solving the problem. It's just listening so they can be heard and then vent and process it and move forward. And then let them know they're doing a great job. Focus on the positive behaviors that you see them modeling every single day and build them up where it has to be genuine. So one of the things that is a stickler for me is like the general blanket of, we really appreciate what you're doing. You hear that a lot, but it doesn't really resonate because it's not specific and it's not intentional to that individual. So we got to be very specific in how we're recognizing and praising the individual for the work they're doing, and just sort of, like I said, just to build them up and let them know they're doing a great job.
Josh, did you want to ask a question? Did you have something you want to
I
share?
do. I just really want an excuse to speak to Dwight tonight. That's really what it comes down to. Dwight, we got a lot of great school leaders and educators here, and I know that we've been talking a lot about kind of the self-care piece and
Yeah.
self-awareness. So I just want you to define self-awareness in the context of school leadership specifically.
Yeah. So self-awareness basically is identifying your emotions and your behaviors in the moment that is happening. So the ability to respond and not react. And the more that we are self-aware, then the better we can manage the relationships that we're responsible for. And so a couple things that we introduced in our school through an equity cohort that we have. We started this equity cohort 3 years ago in response to all the social injustice that was existing in 2020 and into 2021. And my good friend and leadership coach, Jack Slavinsky, helped to create this model, but he introduced several tools. And one of those was the VIA character survey. VIA stands for values in action. It's a phenomenal research-based tool that helps people understand their signature strengths. And the signature strengths are the strengths that come naturally, that energize you and makes you feel more fulfilled. So to raise self-awareness, I asked our staff, depending on those who are participating in the cohort, to take the VIA survey. We also do the DISC profile. So that way we're building a repertoire of, can you identify your strengths, your communication style, and then respond accordingly. And then as you are using and learning the VIA and then understanding your DISC profile, your communication style, you can then turn that into identifying the strengths in other people. And then you can turn that into flexing your communication style to meet the needs of other people and meet the audience that you're talking to. The more we can do that and be more self-aware, then that's helping us managing the relationships, but it's also helping us manage our emotions. Because again, I think I heard it throughout, that helps us become more curious and less judgmental. So we're not pointing the finger and looking at someone as they're less than, we're asking the question, I wonder what's behind this behavior. Or you're looking more intentionally, as Todd said, if you have nothing nice to say, you're not looking hard enough, you start to see those strengths in those individuals. And that raising your self-awareness as well.
Yeah, it's true. When you say that you're looking, like you do find the strengths in other individuals, talk about how impactful that is to find the strengths and how essential it is. Like it's such a big part of the relationship. So finding strength in other people, why is that so valuable in the work that we're doing?
Well, it builds connections. Because again, you see value in other people. That provides more equity, more inclusive, it creates that sense of belonging, and therefore people feel more valued. When people feel more valued, they have a greater sense of belonging. And when they have a greater sense of belonging, they will contribute a lot more. So instead of getting to a level of compliance, which is like, again, Steve Bowler, that's a low level of achievement, you get to a level of commitment because people feel valued, that their strengths are recognized, honored, and then appreciated. And then what I noticed is when we recognize the strengths in other people, they tend to use those strengths a lot more. So now you have more people contributing to the good of the culture, contributing to the workload, seeking how to help other people, balancing out, the workload that people are experiencing, and then volunteering to do more because they feel like they're adding value, and more importantly, they're valued as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we talk about, and you all sitting in here listening, I want you to think about what's going on in your leadership roles. Remember, we're all leaders. And I think people probably come to you when you guys are leading, right, with their problems. So, Dwight, I'd love for you to talk about like are adults misinterpreting kids' behavior? Because there's a lot of blame and frustration around it. What are they missing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the misinterpretation is an issue when there's very little left in the tank for that individual, because when we're tired, we resort to our default behavior. And sometimes that's blame, complain, and defend. And so that may be a misinterpretation or a lack of understanding, and vice versa. So we have to really look, this is where self-care, comes into play. How are we rejuvenating ourselves so that we can learn to manage the behavior that we're seeing, and then work with the students to understand where that behavior is coming from. But to do that, you have to be patient. And to be patient, you have to have some reserves in the tank. So it's all connected. And where the leaders come into play is just recognizing when somebody's tank is not full and finding ways to support that teacher. Could be a teacher, another administrator, could be a paraprofessional, secretary, custodian. Identify when their tank is not full and then come and walk alongside them so that they are able to respond accordingly. And then one of the things we do in our district, we have 4 core values. It's an acronym we call RIPA: relationships, innovation, passion for learning, and accountability. RIPA. So this year our superintendent bought us some little badges, little pins for our lanyards. And our goal right now, our task is to identify people in our we call our staff and faculty, who are living out the core values. Write them a little note, give them a pin so they have something visible and tangible that they can put on to show that they are living out that core value, and more importantly, that somebody recognizes them for that contribution to our school culture. It's a little thing, but again, it's a little thing that has a huge impact because it shows people they add value, therefore they will give more value.
So
Love
true.
it.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was going to say that for those in the chat, I know that Dwight was talking about specific resources, and Charlie, you did an excellent job of throwing a link in there for folks. So definitely check that out. And then, of course, Dwight, you're getting some love in the chat too. Some folks
Yeah.
think you are absolutely amazing. So I wanted to touch on, as a leader, when we're kind of doing our assessment, how do we encourage staff to reflect on and modify the responses specifically to student behavior?
Yeah, a couple things with that. First, when you take the VIA survey, so I'll give a little caveat here. Everybody has the same everyone has 24 characteristics that define our personality. That's research-based, 24 only. You'll have your signature strengths, you have your middle strengths, and you have your lesser strengths. Don't get caught up so much on the lesser strengths. It doesn't mean you lack them. It just means they're undervalued or you don't appreciate them in yourself. So if you feel like you have a passion for learning, but that's number 23, make sure you look at the definition, because we don't want to create stress by looking at where those characteristics fall. Okay. So I want to put that in there because I saw people asking about the VIA. Josh, your question again, I'm sorry about that.
No, just I was talking about it as far as a leader. I know for us, it's obviously sometimes we got to have some crucial conversations with folks, but I'm just curious about like how you encourage staff to reflect on and modify their responses specifically to student behavior.
By asking questions.
Come on.
Like here, I noticed you seem to be a little agitated with that student. Can you unpack that a little bit? Tell me a little bit more. So when you're asking questions, it gives the person opportunity to pause, reflect, and then respond, and then sort of temper the emotion that's behind it. Also, when I see that educators or teachers, for example, or administrators, because that's who I work with more closely, when they're really agitated, all my responsibility at that time is just listen. And then once they are calmed down, then I start asking questions about what would you do differently, or what was your expectation, or I wonder if you would take this approach. What do you think about that? So ask questions. Don't give directives when you want to help have a behavior change. But then you go in and recognize and intentionally point out when they are exhibiting the behavior that you want to see. Because again, they're modeling it, you're coaching them up. Once you see it, you give feedback, and then they now have a rewiring of their brain potentially and their behavior to do something different. Because here's the reality too. We behave in a way because that's most comfortable for us. That's just the reality. It's comfortable, especially when we're tired, we're angry, or upset. Our comfort level is what shows up. So we have to how do we intentionally help rewire the brain and then provide a different scenario so that someone can see that they can respond in a different way. So here, I'll give you a concrete example. So when I was a principal at Gahanna Lincoln High School, had a superintendent named Mark White, who's probably one of the greatest educators I've ever been associated with. He's been a mentor, a friend, he's a co-author. Like, I'm an author because he encouraged us to write a book together. So one day, we were in a meeting with all of the building principals, all the district staff, and I was pretty agitated that day for a number of reasons. And one thing about Mark is that he'll love on you, but he will call you out in a heartbeat. So we're in this meeting, And, he's talking, and then one of the other principals said something and responded in a way. I said, man, that's just stupid and ridiculous. And Mark shot me this look, said, see me after the meeting. I was like, whoa, I felt like a little kid. So I sat there, I just sat back in my seat wondering, like, how's this going to go? So the meeting ended. He called me on the hall. He said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm good. He's like, why did you respond that way? He didn't deserve that. I mean, I felt about this big, felt about this big. I'm sorry, the meeting wasn't over. There was a break. So after the break, we went back to the room. Everybody sat down. And without being prompted, I apologized to that principal for snapping at him because it was the right thing to do. And graciously, he accepted the apology and we moved on. But to me, that was important to do because everybody knew Mark and I were very close. But that closeness didn't prevent him from holding me accountable to the expectations that he had for all the administrators. Instead of him chastising me and ridiculing me, he got curious. Are you okay? And that just sort of deflated things. And I was just like, okay, he cares about me first. So it was like, he's going to help me responsible, like the compliance, but he's also going to give me a level of care. And I keep that with me because it could have gone a different way. But again, he showed compassion, showed care, and then he modeled how to handle a difficult situation. And like I said, and the principal was gracious to kind of give me a pass on that one.
I love, Dwight, that you said he was giving you a level of care.
Yeah.
And it's important that leaders know that they can do that. Like they can hold space for that,
Yeah.
for their people, right?
Yeah.
And we'll wrap it up here. What I'd like to ask you is an important question I think a lot of leaders have is, how do you call people out and hold them accountable and still maintain respect as a leader?
Well, I think the example I just shared, because you never want to call people out in front of a crowd because typically it won't go well because the ego gets in the way and then it'll be a shouting match or a nonverbal battle that people can feel. The room gets real cold because people can feel your attitude. Like I said, they can hear what you say, but they feel your attitude. So, your words may not match the energy that you're giving off. So you got to be real careful. So like I said, the thing that Mark did is he acknowledged that something, I'll call it, I violated that principal's dignity. He called me out on it and made me sit on it for a while because he didn't handle it right away. He's like, see me, we'll talk about it. So that in itself showed, okay, here's the correct way of handling it. But then he corrected me in private, even though it was in the hallway. It was a private conversation. It wasn't a public reprimand. So my approach is to praise publicly, correct privately in a way that maintains a person's dignity. Because as a leader, and I'll stole this from Todd Whitaker, when the principal or the leader sneezes, the entire building catches a cold. So how you respond to one person impacts other people. And you're leaders. Let's say you're walking down the hallway and you have a frown on your face and you're focused on your task, but somebody says, hey, you got a minute and want to have that conversation. The way you respond to them will get around. If you're short, it's like, no, I don't have time. They'll go to the teacher workroom and says, man, have you seen Dwight? He's in a bad mood. 10 people have heard that same conversation. And then the whole school thinks, man, you're in a bad mood or he's in a bad mood. And it's like one interaction created a whole narrative that wasn't true, but that was that person's experience. So that's what we have to be aware of. Joe Sanfilippo says it best, man. People remember. You can't choose what people remember. You can't. So every interaction matters. And that's why having a high level of self-awareness is so important, regardless of the position that we hold, because we interact with people on a day-to-day basis, and every interaction is leading to a story that somebody has experienced and somebody's going to tell. That's just the reality of our work, and there's benefits to that. Like I think the teacher was Mrs. Potts that was just shared. but there's also some consequences because again, people remember how you make them feel.